Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I have the one and only who is a dog dad of three, a Peloton enthusiast, a Golden Girls aficionado, and then a music theater nerd. Ladies and gentlemen, I have Alex Cheney here.
Hello.
I'm so thankful for you to be on here because we share a similar background. I know we talked about it specifically on the music theater side, and then how that creative aspect has transferred over into the business world. And I think in this day and age where so many people are looking for, I would say, great, individuals to work with them and to help build something impactful, aka their business, their company, you've decided to do something a little bit different that I want to talk about, which is not talent, but this concept of unicorns, right? Now, with that being said, I would love for you to be able to give the audience a little bit of a background about like who you are, what is it that you do, and then from there, I'd love to dive deeper into this concept of the unicorn, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as you said, my name is Alex Cheney. I am here in Palm Springs, California. I have been in the recruiting space for about 15 years. Prior to that, my background was all in entertainment. So my bachelor's degree is in music, voice performance. Performed professionally for about 14 years before I decided I wanted, one, my body was saying, let's get off stage. Also, I started, thinking like maybe I should, find a job that has a retirement plan, has health benefits, things like that. It's really difficult to find those when you are an entertainer. So the way and so where I am right now, back in 2023, I had just gone through my second layoff in the course of 9 months. So, very rocky time through the pandemic. It's still somewhat rocky right now. And when I was going through that layoff, the market was just really bad for recruiters. And it was a very saturated market, a job pool, if you will, or candidate pool. And my partner is a consultant in like leadership development, executive coaching space. And so he's had his own business for about 4 years now. And he had been kind of pushing me to try it. And I wasn't sure that I was ready. I wasn't sure that I had the money to set it up. But there were just lots of kind of myths about it that that I was able to debunk, if you will. But I found that I got a client, kind of through my partner, that needed to hire a VP of HR. And so that was kind of like my little tester to see how it would go. And then, yeah, and that's kind of how I jumped into this. And when you talk about unicorns, I have them everywhere. I've got a little unicorn floaty. I've got a, I've got a unicorn nutcracker on my desk.
So,
Yeah, they're everywhere. When I was in, when I was recruiting in-house, like for example, I've worked, for tech companies and all this stuff, and especially in tech companies and these early stage startups, I can't tell you the number of times that I've had a hiring manager come to me and say, "Oh, like, this role is going to be really, really hard to hire. It's really a unicorn," and that was their way of saying, we want this person to be able to do the job of maybe two or three different people combined into one, or not necessarily do the workload, but have the expertise of two or three different people all in one. And that's very common in an early stage startup where you don't have a large team. Like for example, I worked for a company, or I was consulting with a company that I needed to hire a product marketing manager, and this person needed to really understand that's a common job title in the market, but in an early stage startup, this person needed to be part product manager, product marketer, and also understand like how you manage a marketing campaign. And so like, it was all of this in one. And so that became a unicorn. So I've heard that a lot. And then I've actually had clients or hiring managers refer to me as a recruiting unicorn. And I take a lot of pride in that. Pride myself on the way that I engage with candidates, that I engage with hiring managers. An interview or hiring process, if you're looking for a job search is going to be one of the most stressful parts of your life. It can be more stressful than moving, than packing, than going through a relationship change, anything like that. And when I was going through my own processes, when I was just kind of first getting started, I was so frustrated at the number of black holes I feel like I felt into, where I would, apply for a job, I would get an interview, I'd have the interview, I'd feel really, really good about it, and then I would hear nothing. And it was just like this, it was just this feeling of just like, Is anybody out there? Is this even a real job? And so I make sure that every time I talk to a candidate, they know exactly where they are in the process. They know exactly what's going on. I I get on my hiring managers, to say like, hey, you've got to give me feedback. I've got to know because I can't leave this person hanging in the lurch. And sometimes that can be a little, it can be a little difficult to really help the hiring managers understand that like they have a much larger part of this process than they think. But anyway, just kind of that was a very long-winded story, but that's just kind of where I've been, where I've come from, why I built my business, at least from the unicorn perspective. There's lots of other reasons I built it
Yeah, well, first of all, congratulations. I'm gonna give you your flowers now.
too.
Very impressive to do so. But I feel like there's a lot of, especially artists, right, that come from that same background. And I was the same way. Even though mine were more visual arts, I did do the theater side. But just in general, this concept of like, hey, I basically need to do something that's going to help me sustain potentially this career per se path, or just in general make a pivot so that I can start providing for myself in life. And I feel like a lot of artists do come about that. But I think it's interesting because, as you know, being in music theater, you're auditioning a lot for roles and for
Right.
opportunities. And you've gone from being the person who auditions to then
Right.
auditioning.
Yep. That's exactly. It's actually kind of funny. My first recruiting job I ever had, I had just moved to Vegas. I was looking for like an entertainment management type of job, and I saw this position post for talent acquisition specialist, and I said, "Oh, talent. That's what I do." So, like, without even really reading the job description, I applied for the job because I was just really casting a wide net. Well, I ended up getting an interview for this job. And so I'm going through and I'm like preparing myself, and then I'm like, let me read the job description. And I'm like, this has nothing to do with entertainment. I'm like, what? What? I'm not really quite sure I know what this is. And then as I was going through like the group interview and everything, and I was like, okay, this is recruiting. I've never thought about recruiting, but if, like that's never been on my radar. But if I think about it, the skills that you use from an entertainment perspective, especially for casting, you're likely going to use as a recruiter. It's kind of the same thing. So it's actually so that's kind of how I jumped into that and realized that there are so many transferable skills. And the funny thing is that there are so many people in my network that either I went to school with for music, I have performed with, who have all transitioned into like an HR or recruiting type of role. It's shockingly a pretty common pathway.
I wonder why that is, though.
I think it might be. I didn't mean to cut you off, but like I think it might be. As an entertainer, as somebody who's in entertainment in the arts, and I'm sure that you feel this as well. There is such a high level of empathy that you have, because whether it is you are engaging with the public directly, or perhaps it's your art that is engaging with the public. You are still engaging with the public, and you have to really you have to kind of be able to pick up on their cues or on their on things that they their body language or things like that. And so I really think that has helped me, you know that that enabled me to enter the recruiting space, which is a space I'd never been in, but to kind of already have a good footing because I had been in these spaces where I was used to you know, I was used to listening to others. I was used to being not necessarily like, I mean, I know that as an entertainer, you feel like you're always on, you know what I mean? And there are, and I'm not gonna lie, there are times as a recruiter where I'm like, okay, I have to be on right now. And so it's like, it's something that I can do, but it's also, I've been on phone calls with recruiters where I feel like they're reading from a script, or, they're completely monotone, or it's like, I can tell that they're not engaged at all. Whereas I like to look at these opportunities to talk with candidates from an interview perspective as a true conversation. Like I want to get the basics down, but like, oh, you
Sure.
did this? I saw on your resume that you like went to this school. Like, I grew up not too far from there. Or, like I just feel like having the entertainment side of my background, or my entertainment life, if you will, enabled me to be able to have these types of conversations, like true conversations with candidates that help put them at ease, so that way, when we are having these conversations, I can be picking things out on whether I know that they're going to be a good fit for a role or not, even though they might not think that this question really has anything to do with the interview.
Right.
I feel like I got in a tangent there again, but that, that's kind of my common theme.
You're so right, and I do the same. So you're perfectly fine. But a lot of people ask me, they're like, "How did you get into coaching slash consulting?" And I thought about it. I was just like, "Well, for my visual background, we were do critiques a lot from like an exhibition. So having to have those conversations and like nitpick and look at things at a different perspective, I was like, oh, this is kind of how I got into this phase. So what you're speaking on is like, and I tell a lot of people who come from the creative background, you're more than just like the artist, right? There's a lot of skill sets in your craft that is transferable over into the other space if you decide to embark on, right?
Right.
And luckily you've done that. But I agree, every creative person that I've met has had the ability to have like this empathy
Mhm.
and like ability to just connect with people. But I believe in that recruitment, it is needed, right? And I think this is something we'll talk about as well. Is you're almost in a sense the face of the company you're recruiting.
Absolutely.
So if the
Absolutely.
wanting to work with that company, great, because it's on both sides. And I think a lot of people forget that, where it's like as much as you're interviewing them, they're interviewing you. So if you're
100%.
presentation, that culture fit for the potential client or interviewee, I think. Yeah. Right. They're going to be like, actually, never mind. I don't want to work with your company, even if they do fit the criteria.
Right.
But you got to put them through the ropes. How has that been? Because you have to, I think a part of your entertainment space, this is where it comes, your unicornness has the ability to adapt to so many different cultures because you can put
Correct.
character, quote unquote, the different culture of the companies to then, bring
Right.
to the forefront.
Absolutely.
How do you balance? I'm not balance, but how do you manage that?
So there's so many, you kind of like just sparked a whole bunch of different things. No, no, it's great. But like part of my entertainment background was that I spent 6 years working on cruise ships as both an entertainer and also as a production like entertainment manager. And with that, like I'm very fortunate. Like I've been to every corner of the world. I've been able to engage with people from different cultural backgrounds. From a very early time, I learned that the way that you communicate with people in the United States is going to be different than the way you communicate with somebody perhaps in Australia or in Thailand or, in Africa. And so that I had brought that kind of foundation into my recruiting, and to understand that not everybody has the same value proposition, if you will. Not everyone prioritizes the same things when they're looking for a job or when they're looking for a culture. But it's also helped me bring in this concept of the inclusion. And I recruit through the lens of inclusion. That's kind of my tagline of my business, and to help foster that sense of belonging. And I think it's just really important that stay transparent with candidates. When you mentioned that I'm the face of the company, that's like I have so many conversations with hiring managers or with executives that say like, the recruiting process is the first time the candidate is going to get to see the culture of your organization. Like, if you want to build a more diverse team, if you want to attract a more underrepresented candidates, that's wonderful. That's amazing. And I can help you do that. What are you doing internally to make sure that those people feel belonging here? Like, does your underrepresented population within your organization have that feeling of inclusion? Do they feel like they're welcome at the table? And that's kind of really where you need to start. And if that belonging is there, it's going to be seen through the interview process in the way that you either engage with candidates or the way that you ask questions or even just the people that are on the interview panel. Like if you're coming in and saying, if I have been on interview panels actually, or like not, sorry, I've been the interviewee going through the interview process, and every single person I've talked to has been a white male. And yes, I understand I'm a white male as well, but I'm a white male that fits into multiple underrepresented groups. I value inclusion, I value belonging, and when I go through those processes, it makes me think, this company talks about how much they value diversity, but do they really live by that? Just in the people that I'm meeting across the board. And so I just think that those are all things that you really have to think about to make sure that the candidates that are coming in, from these different cultural backgrounds or just from different schools of thought. I mean that, diversity of thought is such a huge part of diversity as well. Like, are those different ideas, are those different backgrounds going to be welcome at the table? And I like to help companies build their processes in a way that showcases that, that diversity, that sense of belonging to the candidates.
Yeah, and I would love to touch a little bit deeper on this concept of diversity and basically providing these spaces for those who feel, I don't say underprivileged, but just like one of the things you're talking about that I come from a health and fitness coaching background. So people, when I talk to them, they're like, yeah, I'm a healthy person. But when I look at their lifestyle or their day-to-day habits or, what they present, it's not streamlined, right? This concept that you're saying right now is like, hey, you can say you want diversity, but if we look at the silver threading throughout your company to like your forefront marketing, it does not align. So
Exactly.
is have you had some of those tough conversations with like the leaders and the company of saying like, hey guys, I know you want this and you're saying this, but it's going to be hard for me to do
Yeah.
X. We're not already doing Y. And do you have to go into that restructuring? Because I know you work a lot on like the process side well too, but
Yeah. So like I've had hiring managers that, what I find, especially in startups, is that hiring managers have already kind of a pretty specific view of what they want in their team and their candidates, and as they should. They're obviously going to be the leader of the team, but sometimes they get their blinders are on so tightly that it's really hard for them to see anything outside of this little teeny, like, full of people that they think are going to be the right role for their right for their job. And like an example is, I was working with a research team, and they were building their team. I helped them build it, from like 7 to 40 in the matter of like, of 18 months. And the head of research, we had a great relationship, lots of back and forth. And she kind of outlined it for me, like these are the things I'm looking for. These are, great, awesome. These types of backgrounds, these types of candidates are the ones who not only perform well in the interview process, but also then are able to perform well on the job. Great, perfect. I'm the kind of recruiter that I will take that and I will absolutely use that. But then I also like to find like what I call the diamonds in the rough. Who are the people that have the transferable skills or similar or adjacent backgrounds, not necessarily the specific degree or the specific work experience. And I started to bring some of those candidates in, and they would get through the early stage of the process. And then when it would come time for the hiring manager, she would deprioritize those candidates so that she could bring in the people that more matched what her sense of the role was. And I was like, okay, but I'm also the kind of recruiter that I'm not going to come in and guns blazing and say, we need to change everything right now. Like, it's got to be, again, that's where the empathy comes in. Like I have to more better understand your needs and things like that. But, staying true to my values, I continue to like just inch these candidates forward until we finally got one on site who ended up completely smashing the process. And the hiring manager then came back to me and was like, and thanked me. She said, it was like, thank you for not forcing the issue, but thank you for really staying on top of this, and thank you for continuing to push and advocate for this candidate. You've really helped me open my eyes to see that I have been pigeonholing myself into this space. And if I just open myself up, there are people that from different backgrounds that still have the experiences that I need for them to excel on this team. And so it allowed us to open up our pipelines. It allowed us to really expand the way that we were recruiting candidates, and it took a couple months. It's not something like where it's like, okay, we're going to do this and here we go. It took a little bit of time to do that, but it ended up it ended up being such a positive experience for the team itself as well, because suddenly the team that was already there was being surrounded by people that were coming with different thoughts and different ideas, and they were hungry for that. And so it got to we started building this team that they were kind of teaching each other. They were developing each other and bringing these different skills and things to the table that they wouldn't have had coming in like in this natural format had we not been able to expand kind of like our pipelines.
you touched on a topic, and I think it's part of one of the questions I want to ask you is about the concept of like debunking certain things, certain myths when it comes to
Hmm.
recruiting for diversity, right? And one of those things, I think you kind of touched on it to where it's like, hey, this person doesn't need to have the specific genetic makeup you're looking for,
Right.
as long as somewhat the DNA matches. What are some of those myths, I guess, for people that's looking to like that are trying to recruit and diversify, but
Yeah.
it's not really talked about?
So there are several. There are several that I really focus on. So we already talked about the one of coming from just like a different type of a background, what have you. That this one also kind of ties into another thing that I like to debunk and or like I like to try to combat, if you will, where I've had a lot of hiring managers where they specifically like if they see somebody that comes in from a perhaps it's not a top 10 university. It'll be this idea that like, oh well, they won't have had as good of academic training, so they're not going to have the fundamentals, or they don't have a master's degree in this specific space, so I don't think they're going to be good for this role. And when we think about wanting to diversify your teams and bring in a more diverse candidate pipeline, not everybody has access to these, to the Stanfords and to the Harvards and to like even like if I go back and look at like I mean I financially I wouldn't have been able to do that, but also academically I wasn't the best student in high school because I went through this phase of like I want to be a performer. I want to be in music and theater. Why do I have to take chemistry? Why do I have to take, I went through that phase. And so my grades wouldn't have allowed me to get into some of these universities, and so I think just looking at when you look at a resume and you're like, oh, that person went to this state school, I'm not sure about that. I think you're totally missing a huge candidate, some really great candidates, by thinking that like just because they went to a mid-major university that they don't have the same type of background and knowledge and skills that
Mhm.
somebody that went to a Stanford or a Berkeley or a Harvard has. So
Yeah.
that's one of the big myths that I like to debunk. The other myth that I really like to debunk, or the other, I guess, bias that I like to debunk, is I've had so many hiring managers that will not consider a candidate that has a large employment gap on their resume. And I think that especially in this, at the time that we're in right now, is such a travesty because so many people have I'm an example. I was laid off twice. Like I have, if you look at my resume, it's a pretty consistent resume. And then I have two roles back to back where I was only there for 9 months. And a lot of hiring managers would look at that and say like short stints, they're not invested in the company. They weren't there long enough to really build something. And I think that that's such a terrible bias because so many of these people that are looking for jobs have such incredible experiences, and the only reason they have these gaps or these short stints is because their startup lost funding, or there was a mass layoff, or perhaps there was something completely different than that. Perhaps there was a family medical emergency that they had to take care
Mhm.
of. And I think this idea that if you're not at a company long term and you're not also consistently working, that you are not as good as somebody else. Because even I talk with candidates that have these gaps in their resume, but they're freelancing on the side. They're doing other things. They're taking that time that while they're looking for a job, and they're getting certifications and other skills.
That's what I was gonna ask.
And so I think it's just, especially if you're talking about wanting to diversify your pipelines,
Mhm.
do I do I really want a candidate who's been at a company for 15, 20 years? Yeah, great. They have longevity and it shows their loyalty, but have they been able to think outside of that box at any point of their career? Because diversity of thought is also such an important piece when you are looking to build an innovative, forward thinking type of company. So those are just a few of the I get biases, myths, however you want to look at it, things that I like to get rid of.
And I'm happy you brought those up because, like, even from my own background, like, I've gone through those too. And part of that is like for those who don't have, to a degree, the access in the beginning stages, right, of their life to go to these collegiate schools or whatnot. Do you feel like they have to make up in other ways just to even like to play on that that same level just because of status, right?
Yeah.
Or
I
like,
mean, I think it's the same type of, not the same. It's a similar, or it's a tangential situation to where a female or a person of color would feel about having to, I'm trying to choose my words correctly. An example I have here, my capstone for my master's degree was looking at the diversity and inclusion in startups and why startups are already like they have a bad rap for not being diverse organizations and things like that. And as I was doing some of this research, I was seeing all these studies that show that a white male will apply, like on average, will apply for a job even if they only match about 50 to 60% of the skills. A woman or a person of color will not do that. They are more likely to only apply for the role if they click like 90% and above of the skills. So, in that same like in that same light, or somebody who doesn't come from a Harvard or a Stanford or whatever, if they do end up being hired into the organization, are kind of already going to be behind the eight ball, and they're going to have to prove themselves even more, or even just to get into the company, like even the interview process, they're probably going to be judged more harshly or rated more harshly if they happen to have a stumble. Whereas the person who's coming from a Berkeley, if they do have a stumble in the interview process, might be like, oh, they'll be fine. I know their background. They'll be able to ramp up really, really quickly. And so it's that same kind of concept here, that you know bias is such a huge part. Everybody has bias. Everybody has their own biases. It's part of human nature. But it's being able, like, what I like to do is I like to help hiring managers or executives be able to recognize their biases and not necessarily erase them or get rid of them, but understand them and know what the impact of their bias is, and how can they use their bias in this type of a process, and recognize, oh, I'm treating this candidate differently because they have these letters after their name as opposed to this candidate who doesn't. So it's kind of like, that's just really how I think about it.
Yeah. The thought process comes to mind to where it's like, okay, does it get to the point where we start to take away, like, we don't allow the titles from these different, it's tough because you want it because, like, hey, I went to Harvard, I went to, like, I did a lot of work personally as a candidate to get there. So I'm leading into the conversation to where it's like, will it get to the point where these companies don't have the ability to look at specifically where a person has gone as far as the accreditation point, but just more of what's the skill sets that's listed? Like, how do you think that's going to come a time where that's going to happen? Or
I hope so. And I'm already starting to see some companies, like, we're in a really interesting time right now. Like, I don't want to like go get too deep into this, but we're in a period right now where diversity and inclusion is on the chopping block. And and there are companies that now feel empowered to not have to look through those lenses and are able to say, oh, it doesn't matter, we don't need to build a diverse team. But then there are others who still really champion that. And what I'm seeing is that job descriptions, when they're coming out, are focusing more on the actual day to day
yeah,
or the actual business impacts of the role, as opposed to, you must have a degree in computer science, you must have this. It's like, you must be able to do this, and if that means, if they have a degree in graphic design or fine arts, but you went to this, you've been going to this boot camp and have been doing these, side projects, and you have all of these skills from the technical side, maybe that will work.
yeah,
So I'm hoping that these companies that are valuing diversity and inclusion, I hope that they start moving more towards this actual, like, the actual impacts of your role type of job description, as opposed to checking off a box of skills. Because I have worked with people who have come into the business and checked off every single box of hard skills, but then they don't have any of the soft skills that are needed for the role, and it ends up actually being not the best hire, because they were, the team was so focused on the actual hard set of skills that the person has. So I'm really hoping that companies start thinking more about business impact in a role, because I mean, that's what's going to keep somebody there. You know what I mean? Anyway.
no, I love it. Well, transitioning and pivoting a little bit because I would love to dive a little bit more, and I keep saying a little bit because we have a little bit Alex.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that. I was just like, oh, this is unique. Okay, back to the unicorn aspect. How did you come up with the name?
So yeah. So when my partner was you know you know championing me to start my own business, I was like, I don't know. Like I just drug my feels. Like one and more, and not even the money or whatever aside. Like me thinking that I needed to have all this money in the bank to do it. I was also thinking like one, there are so many recruiting consultants out there. There are so many recruiting agencies, recruiting businesses. They're all stuffy. Like I was thinking about. I was like, I'm not that type of person. I mean, hell, like this shirt's very loud. Like I'm not a suit wearing person. I've been in environments where I had to wear the dress code was khakis and a collared shirt, and I did the bare minimum. It was like polo shirt and Dockers, and it fit it. Right, it fit the mold, but like I got looked down upon because I wasn't in a suit. But I was like, I'm not stuffy like that. I'm very approachable. I'm not like other recruiters, and I didn't want my name in it. Like I didn't want to be like Alex Cheney recruiting or Alex Cheney enterprises. Like I just like that just sounds too stuffy. And so like my partner would be throwing out different names of things, and I would just be like, "Bleh, oh." And we were just sitting around one day. He I'm a huge Schitt's Creek fan, so I don't know if you're familiar with Schitt's Creek, but there's a character that okay, Alexis, and she has her song a little bit Alexis, and so my partner was like, he was like a little bit Alex, and we both laughed, and like we're like ha 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 ha, and then I kind of paused for a second, and I was like,
We
is
got
that it? I was like, is that it? I was like, okay. I was like, I don't want to get too excited here. I was like, let me go even see if this is available for a website. Is it available for an LLC? And I went and I looked at everything and it was, and I said, okay, I think that's my sign. And so I was like, okay, let's try it. I did. That's how I set up the website and the LLC. And then I had friends from Vegas that I knew that were starting up a graphic design business. And I told them what I was doing and what I was going for my business. And that's how I got my logo with the unicorn and like my name in it. It's just it went from like 0 to 100 in like 3 days, which was very exciting. Oh, actually, I have here. I could have my business card here, so you can kind of see. There's my
I
yeah.
love the in the A.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of how it started, and I am very much what you see is what you get, and so I want people when they see a little bit Alex, I want them to automatically know he's not like other recruiters, and I think it has helped me stand out. It's I'm hoping that it continues to help me stand out, but yeah, that's just kind of how it came.
I like it. What I love about it as well too is you lived in this world of play. I had a podcast,
Hmm.
another guy, Michael. His big thing is the concept of play, and I feel like he comes from a creative background as well. I think most creatives have this area of like, let's just play around, let's just throw around content.
Right.
But like you did this, something came out of it, and you're like your curiosity led you. And I feel
Mhm.
like a lot of people, if they just allowed their curiosity to lead them, right? Not saying it has to be the way or it has to be the answer, but just allow it to roll, right? You'll find yourself going from that 0 to 100 real quick. And then you're like, okay, well, now I'm here. Now I don't have to quote unquote worry. I can test, I can try it out, see what happens. Perfect. And then come to find out it was available. Now you got, the start of
Right.
something great. But I think it is good that you leaned in and embodied, that unique value of who you are, right? I talk to people a lot of the times, and it's like, what's your unique value zone? And you can talk about the little things that make you different, or your company different, but it is very crucial, right? And I think your perspective on recruitment is definitely different from like some of the recruitment places I've heard or I've used as well too. And I think, as you start to lean more into it, 100%, I have no doubt in my mind, like you're going to continuously build which you are now. Talk to me a little bit because I believe you have three major, what I call like pillars slash services within the company,
Mhm.
right? Talk
Yeah.
to me a little bit about like what those are as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I again, that's so my main thing is that I'm looking at recruitment through the lens of inclusion, and whether that be that you need a very niche role hired, like maybe you have this unicorn that you're looking to hire, or you're looking to bring in an executive. I can help you with that. I can help a company. really target those, those unicorn or those diamond in the rough types of candidates to come in for these very specific types of roles. I would say that my sweet spot in recruiting are those more specific types of roles. Like I've done high volume recruiting, where you have to hire 17 of the same type of individual. It's something that I can do, but it's not necessarily where my own passion lies, because I love to be able to. I feel like finding those unicorn or those diamond in the rough candidates is very much like a puzzle. It's seeing what's the sweet sauce. Like when I'm searching for people, like what's the, how do I match up the backgrounds? What's the puzzle that I'm trying to solve to find those? I'm also very much in one of my other passions is process improvement, process creation, and process improvement. I'm extremely process driven,
That's it.
and so like even though I am a creative, very very in that realm, I'm also very mathematical and scientific. So which actually I've learned is not necessarily a bizarre combination in a creative. So I very much like to have order and structure to a point. I like to create processes. For example, I with one of my clients, I helped them completely reshape their interview process, where they were noticing that candidates were, what we noticed is like through the pipeline, so candidates were converting from like the early screens to the technical screen, into the hiring manager screen at a pretty high rate. But then when they would get to like the on-site and potential offer, it plummeted. And when we looked at that, we're like, what's happening? Why are these people moving forward at the top of the funnel, and at the bottom of the funnel, that it's kind of tanking?
Yeah.
So we tweaked some of the questions at the early part to really pull out more of the actual hard skills that were going to be needed for the role. But then what we noticed when I was putting scorecards together from different panelists, we were noticing that the panelists' ratings were all over the map. Like there could have been like three people in one session, and
Yeah.
all of them are rating differently. And so that got us to be okay. We're not on the same page. Are we all talking about the same role? Are we all looking at it through the same lens? Are we bringing our bias to the table? Things like that. And so I helped them create a rubric that was able to go with each module. So like, okay, here are the types of questions we're going to ask, and here's the rubric on what are we looking for in these answers. If they target these specific things, then this is what we're looking for. And what we saw is that not only did the ratings start to even out, but the conversion rates got much better through the bottom of the funnel. And we were also, this was a secondary positive, we were able to decrease the time to hire by like 5 days. Which, yeah, because of the candidates that are getting through, it was slightly lower at the top of the funnel, but because of that, the strongest candidates were getting through, and we were able to get them through faster. So yeah, so that, I mean, I'm really passionate about that process side, and being able to showcase that. And I would say, I guess the third pillar, just really focusing on the DEI specifically. I kind of touched on this in the beginning of our conversation, but a lot of when I talk to hiring managers, or I talk to C-suite executives or whatever, I feel like there are so many misconceptions in that. Yes, I can build you a diverse candidate pipeline. I can build you a pipeline of underrepresented candidates. And we can hire those individuals. But if you are not fostering an internal environment of belonging or inclusion, those candidates that I have spent all this time getting for you are likely not going to stay. And your turnover is still going to be really, really high. And so that kind of, it's at that moment when you kind of like hold the mirror up, and it's like, and they're like, well, what are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, does your internal population feel a sense of belonging within the organization? And if they don't, let's tackle that first before I try to start bringing in, this huge diverse pipeline. Because I think a lot of companies also, when they think about DEI, they're like, okay, we're going to take a picture, we're going to put it up on our website, and we need, one of these, one of that, and it's like, and they bring them all together and they take the picture. And so then it's out on their marketing, their marketing collateral. And it's like, oh, look, a diverse team. But then it's like, okay, but if you're not actually fostering that, people are going to feel that. And the way that I look at it is that if you are truly fostering a an environment of diversity, an environment of belonging, an environment where I feel like I can bring my unique individual self to the table and be appreciated, probably not going to have to put out collateral because those people are likely already sharing it. They're
Mhm.
probably talking about it on their LinkedIn. They're telling their friends. They are referring people into the business because of how inclusive and how much belonging they feel. I think I don't think that companies really think about the DEI or diversity and inclusion belonging with enough of a strategic lens. I feel like they think of it as a checkbox, and it's so much more than that. So anyway, those are my three pillars.
I love it, and I think 100% because as a creative, I am very like systems driven for some.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's because like my artistic design background, but I do agree. I feel like a lot of creative people do like resonate more with the arts. I mean, with the maths, the science,
Right.
for some reason. I don't know. But question, I think you were talking about basically like these applicant tracking kind of tools or
Yeah.
systems, right? Do you think the inclusion, or do you think because like we have like AI and all these different automations, do you think it comes a time where it starts to hinder the ability for a company to actually them on that DEI?
I understand. I understand that AI is the big hot topic right now, and in some ways, I do see a lot of benefit for it. However, I also know that AI is not going to bring an actual human lens to anything. It can pick up like perhaps like it can help you like weed out hard skills and things like that. AI is not going to help you with anything soft skill related. I have had a lot of candidates actually that I've been talking with, or friends of mine even that are on the job market that have gotten so frustrated in hiring, like trying to even get their application through because so many of these applicant tracking systems are infiltrated with AI. And if you don't have a specific keyword somewhere in your resume, it doesn't get flagged. And so like I know people, friends of mine, who are now they built their resume, but they're going through and in white font so you can't see it, they're just putting all these keywords in. Like hoping that maybe there's gonna be some kind of secret formula that one of these keywords is gonna flag it in the ATS and move their application forward. As a recruiter, I tend not to use anything in that way. I personally will look at every single resume that is coming my way. I want to look at it and read it because AI is not going to pick up on the fact that, oh, I know what this company does. They likely have used this technology that this company needs. I just feel like there's so much deduction, and it's almost like a not a guessing game, but it's like you're being an investigator. And I think that there's some of those aspects that AI just won't be able to pick up on. But then there are also, I use AI in like if let's say I'm making a pitch for a company, or I'm going to do an outbound message and I'm going to try to really entice candidates. I'll put it through like a chat GPT or something like that to be like, have I included language that would sound biased, or am I using the most inclusive language I can? And I've been surprised that like it'll come back and say like this word is not inclusive because of this reason, and I'm like, oh my god, I never even thought about and so in those aspects, I think AI is great because it puts a completely different lens on it, and it takes out any personal feelings that I have about the way I wrote something. But I think AI, I think it's a very powerful tool. I think it has to be used um, in the right way. I think it needs to be used sparingly. I will say that I think there are companies that are relying too much on AI. You know, who knows? Maybe in the next few years, the AI will get more. What am I looking for? What's the word? Like more focused in specific areas. But I just feel like it's such a buzzword right now. AI. It's like everybody wants AI, AI, AI. And I just think, I think we should put the brakes on a little bit and really make sure that we're using it in the right way.
Yeah, conversation I have with buddies of mine who develop like software for AI, and even they're saying it to where it's like, hey, use it, but remember there still needs to be a human-centric focus to, using it as well. And it's like, how do you use, and it sounds like from like your space is how you can use it for the mundane things, but when it comes to the actual conversations and weeding out and connecting, the right applicants, that's where that human centric focus needs to, basically it can't replace. You have to be there. And my question then is like, how are you able to recruit at such a high level these unicorns when there's so much of a demand? Like that, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, I guess I could say luckily that, I don't have to. There have been a couple times when I've had like, multiple unicorn requisitions on my plate, but they've all been in different spaces.
Mm.
So it's like, I'm not necessarily having to pull from the same type of population, but the way that I recruit is, I like to ask a hiring manager, okay, you say that this role is a unicorn. Do you know anybody that is this person, whether they want the job or not? Do you know anybody? And a lot of times they'll be like, oh, I need them to be like this person, like find this person, and if this person could do this extra skill, that's what I need. And I'm like, okay, great. But like that, at least if it gives me somewhere to start where I can look at their profile. Why is this person the right fit? Like, and I don't, and again, I don't look at education background. I don't look at anything like that. I look at where have they been working? What are the products they've been working with? What are the technologies they're working with? If I'm like worked at, this person has worked at a B2B SaaS organization, but they've also, if I see a comment thread of like SaaS, 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 I'm like, okay, so they not only do they need this person to have all these hard skills, she really needs somebody that has worked in a SaaS organization. So it's like there's just a lot of things to think about. And again, like I look at it as a puzzle. Like
Yeah.
I take the job description, great. I mean, I can look at the job, like, okay, fine. I see like the bullet points it have there, but then I look to see, who's applied, like have they had people apply for the role before? Why have they not been the right fit? Or why potentially did they get a conversation and what was missing from their conversation, and that's kind of how I do my investigative work and put the pieces together to see like, is there somebody that is this person but also has this additional space that they weren't looking for. And a lot of times I have to, I'll go through this and I have to take it back to the hiring manager and say, okay, we need to look at this from a prioritization perspective. I may find somebody that has all of the skills that you're looking for, but some of those skills may be stronger than others. Like, where are you? What is the priority? Like, of these three things you said this person needs to do they need to be able to do them at the same level? Is one of them like, is there a runway or is there time to ramp somebody up on one of these skills? Will they get this natural ramp when they're working? So it's a lot of back and forth with hiring managers. I think, you know, and again, that's where I bring my empathy in. Is I don't come in guns blazing. I I work with the hiring manager and I go with what their needs are first, and then I see how it's going, and then I have the data to bring back to the hiring manager and say like, okay, I've used your formula. These are the candidates I brought in. I think we're missing something here. Let's talk about this a little bit more deeply. And so like it's empathy, data, they kind of, that's how I bring in and really consult and get on the right page with my hiring managers.
I like that. What would you say would be like the best investment for a recruiting team for like long-term success?
Ooh, I think I think a really good investment for a recruiting team would be to have a really strong internal development system, where the recruiters are able to continue to develop their skills, not just from a recruitment perspective, but also providing them opportunities to engage with executives, to engage with senior management. And it's something that's like won't cost you any money. It won't cost, it might cost some time, but it's not like you have to go and build a tool. But it allows, I feel like that allows the people on your recruiting team to be able to understand the business at a deeper level. Because if you really think about it, you know, when you look at what's been going on with these organizations, when layoffs happen, a lot of times the first people laid off are recruiters, and that always baffles me because I get it, you're not needing to hire people, but your recruiters are often sometimes the most strategic people within your business because they see things from a 20,000 foot view. They probably have interacted with multiple leaders across the business. They understand how the different parts of the business interplay. And I think that being able to provide those opportunities within your organization is really important. I also think that there are some tools out there that have really benefited me as a recruiter. One of my favorite is actually a tool called Textio, and it's I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a tool where you can basically put in any type of written content into it, and it will tell you grade it on inclusivity. How does this stack up to other ways? And then it highlights it. It shows like, this word that you have used is biased toward, is more masculine than a word than you could use that would be more neutral. And it's like, again, it's like things that you don't really think about, but having used that tool, it really has changed the way that I engage from a written, like it changes the way that I build my messaging to candidates. And what I find is that it has helped me increase my engagement rate. Where like once I started reformatting the way that I was engaging through the written form, I was able to bring I was able to get a higher rate of message acceptance, a higher rate of engagement, get more people into the pipelines. I think that and what I find is that candidates are really appreciative when they know that you're doing things like that. When you say they're like, hey, we're using this tool called Textio, they're like, oh my God, that's amazing that you're using, that you're thinking about inclusivity from this perspective. But it's helped with building job descriptions. It can help with building, like a memo you're going to send out to your whole team. So that's actually a tool that can go even beyond recruiting. It can be used for your entire organization.
Of that. And my this was came to thought because yeah, I don't know why you would get rid of recruitment as like I don't know why any company would get started recruiter or talent,
Right.
person. But my mind is also it's like, well, what if they and maybe they already do this, maybe you already do this, to where it's like, hey, maybe you don't need new roles, but we can keep an eye on your current staff and how they're developing if they've acquired skill sets to then like create opportunities or
100.
there is a projection. It's like we can already tell from the profile of everybody that's in the organization how they're improving slash upgrading and then just shifting. So it's like this oversight, not to necessarily bring somebody new in, but like shift them up because you see, like, does that already happen or
It should. We would refer to that as succession planning.
okay?
From a leadership perspective, you would call it a succession planning. You might also refer to it as like career laddering or things like that. And yeah, I mean that's again something that it boggles my mind that they don't lean on, that companies don't do that. So like if you're in this role, like let's say that you're in marketing and you are in this role. What's the next step for you? What is like, have we built this out? And is there a way to then, develop yourself internally to move into these higher level roles? If a company, yes, a company will do layoffs, but likely they're going to start to grow again. And are you ready for that? Like, what is that next step going to need to look like? And is there a way to be able to shift people around with their skills? Are there transferable skills into other areas of the business where you could then utilize this individual's expertise in this one area, but then bring it in for a different perspective in this new area? Like I don't think that companies do that enough. And to be honest, I think it is a product of not being able to see the big picture.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get blinders on and they're focusing on the today, and they're not focusing on the 1 year from today. I've had one of the organizations I got laid off from, they laid off, a bunch of people, and then it was kind of like a few months down the road, it was like, we need to post these roles again because we got rid of the wrong people. And I think that a lot of these layoffs are happening, just they're going really, really fast and doing it, and they're not thinking about, is this actually the right move? Yes, we want to save money today, but is this going to save us money in the long run? And a lot of times it doesn't, because then they have to go right back to square one and spend all the money to build their teams again.
Got you. Sounds like you're crushing it already and doing it, but that's in my mind. I'm like, why would you not have that to where it's like, hey,
Yeah.
since you said that, right? The year from today, where do you see the future of this space going?
I really hope that we continue to have actual human interaction in recruiting. I'm a, I am, even though I do use some AI, I am fearful of AI. Just I'm worried that it will become very robotic, that we will take the human side out of human resources, and regardless of how technological this world becomes, there will always be a need to have actual humans working on these things. And I'm hoping that we can keep the human aspects in recruiting. I would say that this next year or so, just with where things are in the world right now, I think is also going to be really interesting to see, which companies are going to succeed, which companies are going to continue to grow, which companies may have some challenges. We're watching companies kind of have massive shifts to their strategies because of things that are happening, in the political world. That's not uncommon. That's not necessarily a surprise, but I'm interested to see what that means for the long term of, how companies continue to grow and thrive. But my hope is that, these innovative startup spaces that I love so much are going to continue to thrive, and, bring these new types of accessible technologies, and in the healthcare space, in the hotel space, like they're just in the hospitality space. There's so many spaces that have these new startup technologies happening, and which I think is really, really exciting. And so my hope is that those spaces are able to continue to thrive, and have the funding they need, and to bring more accessible, inclusive technologies to the world.
And I guess what's next or what's down the road for yourself and a little bit of Alex?
So, I mean, I'm hoping that I will bring in some new clients soon, just in transparency, because DEI is a bit on the chopping block. I've had a lot of my candidates kind of put their brakes on at the end of last year, just with uncertainty about what the environment was going to look like. And so, I'm actively engaging with with earlier stage startups to see like how I might be able to help their businesses. And I'm hopeful that my client portfolio will continue to grow, and what have you. But yeah, I'm going to continue to fight the good fight for diversity and inclusion and belonging, and hope that it doesn't completely get erased.
I love it. And for those who they're like, "Hey, I love everything that you're saying, Alex. Like, we need this. I'm actually looking for this." Where can they find you, connect with you in order to find more information or chat with you, how they can also apply this?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. So, Alex Cheney, again, Cheney on LinkedIn. If you pull me up, it has my name, and then it has the unicorn and a rainbow flag next to it, so can't really miss me. And then my website is www.alittlebitalex.com, and you can send me a message through that, or you can connect with me via email at alex.com.
And we're going to link all this below. Alex, our name of our company is Info Profit, right? So the concept is like all you really need is a little bit of information in order to profit slash, make a business out of it. What's one piece of insight or information you would love to leave with the audience today?
I think that if there's one nugget that people take away from this conversation, is that you can't champion diversity without belonging and inclusion. And if you're looking to build a diverse team, you need to look at internally first to make sure that the underrepresented people that you already have within your company feel like they belong there and feel like they're welcome at the table.
I love it. Thank you so much, Alex. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. Until next
Great
time,
to chat with you too.
get you.